and I came across a particularly touching poem by a gentleman called Alastair Greason. And I wrote to him and said, would you mind if I put this poem in the appendix in the book, because I thought it captured so much of the pain and the whole story in quite a succinct way and a touching way. And he said yes, and it's in the book. And he's actually here today, and it would be really beautiful if you could read that poem, Alastair, and share some of your thoughts.
Thank you. Right, hello, good afternoon everyone. I hope this is going to be at least half as eloquent as what Gianfranco has just said, so apologies if it isn't. It's really nice as well to see a number of friends here today, and actually those people in one way or another have got connections in their past with the Courtworks, sometimes just by where they live, but also from other points as well. So I'd just like to give you about sort of 10 minutes or so of context as to why I've been interested in the Courtworks and why it's been something that was very formative in my life and how it led to me actually writing a poem. And I would say that my poems are incredibly amateurish and they're not commercial at all. And in actual fact, the reason that I put the first poem out, which was about the Courtworks, was to very much get people engaged and talking during that terrible lockdown that we all went through, because there was an amazing Facebook group called related to Heaven, and I live down in the southeast now, and I really value being part of that group because it just helps to keep an awful lot of stories and memories alive, and it's hugely valuable for people. So I simply put the poem into that to get people talking, and it did. So until I was about 4 years old, I actually lived on Mountain Lane Estate and one street away from Jenny Sheeran. I don't have, of course, any particular memories of the plant at that age, but at around about the age of 4, we moved to the Campbell Park Estate, and that was about 3/4 of a mile away from the plant. And progressively during childhood, then started to become aware of this behemoth of a place, really, like a living, overpowering entity that towered over all the housing estates in the area. Because the Courtworks dominated Heaven, it really led to a raft of daily sensory experiences, which you touched on. So, as a child, I was convinced the place was responsible for producing rotten eggs and the clouds that filled skies. In the bushes that bordered what became known later as the Mountain Railway, I can distinctly remember with family picking enormous blackberries the size of those I've never seen since. And of course these would have thrived, ironically, because of all the sulphurous discharges from the works. And that odour was an almost constant feature of living near the plant for so many of us. Wiping down the washing lines and our window ledges, removing black dirt, and quickly bringing clothes back in from the washing line whenever the wind changed direction. Those were just normal day-to-day experiences which we expected living on the estates where we did. The constant pulsing orange glow that was in the night sky, that lit my bedroom up, and actually it seemed so natural that when it disappeared for a while during the miners' strike, I actually found the dark skies were quite alien. The pollution which we and my family and neighbours experienced at the Campbell Park Estate was very real, but it was somewhat less when compared to our former neighbours at the Mountain Lane Estate and also those residents on Luke's Lane Estate. Those people, they lived directly in the path of the prevailing wind. Now, despite the smell of the dirt, I would find activities at the plant and the railway fascinating. So through a gap in the houses opposite where I lived, I could watch the mineral trains pass by for many years, sometimes late in the winter evenings, and all you could make out was the glow of the lights on the top of the car as they thundered along in the pitch black. Just as a little sideline to that, there was a level crossing in Monkton Village, and the crossing keeper there was a really friendly chap called Angus McGuinness. He'd worked most of his life on that railway, on different sections of the railway. It used to be very long, And he would allow myself and my friends at junior school in Monkton to ride on the crossing gates as he slammed them at high speed over the floors. Don't remember anybody falling off. So in the days before health and safety culture, and with not a lot of money going around, it was a great form of entertainment for us. It was very easy for me actually to spend half an hour at times standing on the bridge at Mill Lane, which we saw in some of the videos there, and I used to look down in amazement at the plant because the bustle and order that existed in there seemed to be part of a chaotic sort of sprawl, but it somehow worked. And also, there was a brief glimpse as well, of the Quenching Tower, which was just this cathedral-like enormous structure. And as our car used to pass along Luke's Lane itself, I loved glancing in there, and you would just see a massive fire erupt into clouds of steam, and it would envelope the car as we went along. The plant, again, as we mentioned, it produced a constant symphony of industrial noises, and that actually competed with the shipyards in the town in terms of volume. Those became very familiar day-to-day sounds, and I was very accustomed to those. But we, at that point, had the luxury of just living that little bit further away ourselves, unlike so many other people, including people who are here today. As a teenager, after school, several of us here went to the other comprehensive school in the town, which used to be known as Clegwell. But I used to go running around the outside of the plant on an evening, and completely unknowingly was inhaling countless visible, invisible, and visible dust particles. And it was around that time I became aware of a campaign led by Jenny, and I started to form some sense of the effects which the plant was reported to have on people's health. But I didn't really appreciate or comprehend or foresee any of the enormity of those issues at that age. And nor did I, and I suspect nor did many other people, actually appreciate the great personal and collective efforts which Jenny and her supporters were enduring in order to try and strike that balance, that important balance, between the health of our communities and the badly needed employment that came from court workers. Another connection to Monkton, strangely, came later on in life as myself and two of my very good friends who are here today worked to preserve part of the former Boars Railway at Springwell Village. And it was the remains of that railway that still ran at that point from the court works down to Jarrow Stairs until 1986, when road haulage finally took over transporting the coke. And those lorries, they really resulted in deposits being distributed into previously untouched areas of the town, such as along Victoria Road. During closure of the line, and later during closure of the plant, we were able to recover materials and artefacts from there for preservation. And it was quite a surreal experience to walk around a once busy, bustling site as it was being dismantled. Just going back slightly to 1983, I actually first met three people whose influences would lead to me writing these amateurish poems. And their skills and dedication kind of pushed me and took me from that world of childhood life structures and preconceptions to where we can probably all draw sort of abstract perspectives in life. Now, forgive me if you haven't heard of these people, but those amazing, clever people were Carol and Tom Kelly and a chap called Derek Woodcock. Carol taught drama at our school at Heaven Comprehensive, and alongside her husband Tom, they gave up countless hours of their personal lives, providing a drama club, running school drama productions, and organising trips to contemporary theatre shows. Tom went on to become an accomplished poet and a playwright, and he was actually formerly poet in residence here at the Word. And in 1986, Tom wrote a short poem about court works, and after reading that piece of work, I promised myself that one day I would write something about it as well. Derek Woodcock was mine and our former English teacher at Heaven Comprehensive, and he was a man who just ceaselessly engaged with pupils as young adults. He was a dedicated professional, somebody whose skillful delivery I and many of my friends we've never forgotten. And like Carol and Tom, Derek was somebody who was able to inspire and allow pupils to explore the power of creativity. So more than 3 decades later, it was learning of his passing that finally spurred me to put pen to paper about the cookworks. So after months of rewriting words and thoughts, I sent this amateur poem to my closest friend Robin, who's here with us today. He and his family lived on Luxlane Estate, directly in the predominant path of all these deposits that were being blown out of Moncton on a day-by-day basis, all day, every day. Robin's account of the situation in his street alone is incredibly revealing and poignant, and with his permission, I'd like to give a voice to his words. Of the 4 houses on our block, there have been 3 instances of cancer in our house. A direct next door neighbour died of brain cancer. In the house next to them, a neighbour died of lung cancer. Next to them, 3 people in 2 successive generations died of cancer too. Although I can't attribute my dad's death directly, I would ask, what are the chances of all the homes on a terrace of 4 houses experiencing incidents of cancer? Food for thought. Robin encouraged me to post a poem on the Heaven Facebook group, and it was really humbling to see it attract such a lot of debate. Many of the comments related to personal and familial family health issues, which still exist now, decades on from the plant's closure. And I'd like to just read you 3 of those out of about 70 odd comments that were made. Firstly, I remember after its closure seeing pure white snow for the first time. Before that, snow was always covered in tiny black specks. Another read, my mum died of lung cancer, plus another 5 close neighbours. I think Jenny Sheeran was right to campaign about cookworks. And one which resonates particularly for me is this comment. I lived in the shadow of the cookworks from boyhood until I left the town 41 years ago. Too many friends died far too young in an area close to the works. We would call it a cluster now. Pleased it's no longer there to inflict its misery on future generations. It was incredible to discover that Jean Franco was actually writing Jenny's biography and documenting that important story of the campaign by the Heaven Residents Action Group, and it was a surprise to be contacted by him asking to use the poem. And I actually remain very touched that he decided to include it. I named it The Last Cookworks because although other cookworks did outlive Moncton, such as down at Redcar and South Bank at British Steelworks on Teesside, Moncton was the last of the many national coal board or national smokers field plants in the once mighty Durham coalfield, some of which were in incredibly densely urbanised areas. So Norwood and Gateshead was another one which was absolutely surrounded by houses. Last year, we visited family down in South Wales, and I spent the day in a park with my children about 3 miles from Port Talbot Steelworks. On that day, from its coal ovens, the wind direction drove those same odours, the distant white chemical steam clouds, all towards us, and brought back the thoughts and the smells and those countless legacies which Moncton produced. It reminded me of the love-hate aspects associated with the works, and still makes me think about the people who are living down in Port Talbot today in those densely populated terrace streets just yards from that plant. And I feel very lucky that my children will never know that existence. Patterns exist between toxic deposits and health inequalities, and we know that that's emerged in countless examples across the globe. And it's actually scientifically very difficult disassociating those from other health influences. And I realise that it's easy to become subjective in life, but I also believe that it's disingenuous to suggest that Moncton was not responsible for vast tranches of ill health and disease, which cannot simply be attributed to previous social lifestyles and occupations. So I feel very proud to pay tribute to those who had their life shortened by the output from Moncton. To Jenny, an honourable lady, her fellow campaigners, supporters, and the generations of employees who worked in often hellish conditions at Moncton and other coalworks. When I reflect back at her solid, persistent determination, resourcefulness, and personal sacrifices, I believe that had the internet and social media existed during Jenny's campaign, she would have become a world-recognised name in the fight for environmental and social justice. And finally, just before I read the poem, there's one dichotomy which I often consider, and the irony of this is not lost on me, and I suspect also not on many other people. And that is the question: did Monkton Court Works impose itself into the lives and homes of generations of our families? Or is it the case that generations of families were unwittingly imposed upon the existence of the Court Works? So thank you for giving me that little bit of time, and I'll hope you'll enjoy the following words. The last Court Works. Shrouding victims in living steam, watching over them, slowly draining hours from lives. Jenny's right, you know, time will prove it. This burning hell on Monkton's Fell, stealing husbands, kids and wives. Two-faced, giver of meagre wealth, taker of rightful health. Giant grey ogre, stalking your neighbours, staring down over their rooftops. Never still, yet never moving, and always awake. You feed giant mutant blackberries, sneaking rich poisons into our bodies, while sulphur coats the backs of throats. Yet beauty lies in your sprawl, metallic music signals your life. Nothing lies beyond your reach until we run away, creeping into homes, shops, schools, and the smallest of places. Lungs, blood, cells, our very DNA. Charging black ants, once green, amber eyes glow high upon their heads, lead columns of blind, obedient red ants, and feed your glowing belly with black breads. You send these servants to scuttle off down Georgia's ancient metal road, bearing your steaming fruits, warmth for the many and riches for the few, coating washing lines and windowsills with deceitful, smokeless gifts and ills. Torrents pour down, subduing insatiable thirst, day into night and back into day, then sending white impostors to joyfully dance your thanks, billowing high in blue crystal sky or coughing sideways across the fields. You can't hold back your anger, tentacles sweep, lash out, defile, gripping Hexham, Clyde and Suffolk before releasing just for a while. Mourning your sisters and brothers, their flames and bright arc lights turned off. Revenge for Norwood, Hawthorne, Lambton, Fishburn, Derwenthoff. But still your greatest might and wrath, ever unleashed upon little Luke's Lane, stunned, snared in your favourite path, perhaps because its folk know best your pungent lies. Now tell them again of smokeless joys, whilst another widow cries. Thank you for giving me